What is happening, Titan Clan? It is your boy, KingTitanX here, back with another video. And as you guys can clearly see from like the title, I'm not sure how I'm going to title this. Anyways, basically, this what if is going to be about if Deku was the twin brother of Raven from Teen Titans. Oh, and considering he would be the twin brother of Raven, that also means that he is one of the sons of Trigon. Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting what if. Basically, I would say that they have a pretty similar origin. And when I say pretty similar origin, I'm more referring to with Raven. Basically, their mother ended up running away, joined a cult, summoned Trigon, and ended up getting impregnated by Trigon. Of course, they would end up, retreating to an alternate dimension called Azarath, where they were trying to tame their emotions, basically trying to suppress their emotions. I'm turning off this music. Basically trying to suppress their emotions. And it worked for Raven, but not so much for Deku, honestly. Instead, this just actually made it worse. They realized that he was getting too difficult to control, so they ended up sending him back to Earth. But here's the issue: this was not the same Earth. As a matter of fact, this was a completely different Earth. This was an Earth where people had these strange powers called quirks for some reason. It seemed to be dominant for whatever reason. What do I mean by this? Basically, 80% of the population seemed to have powers, while 20% didn't, which was interesting, to say the least. I would say that Azuku is 4 years old here. He does not look the same as in canon. I would say that he has completely black hair and pale skin, like his sister, along with red eyes. But no, as a matter of fact, I'm keeping the green eyes. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was basically describing Izuku's appearance. And just forget everything that I had just said. Basically, just imagine that Deku does have like black hair and paler skin than in canon. He would still retain the same green eyes like in canon though. The only thing here is that, well, this black hair of his also has some tips that are white. This would symbolize this would basically symbolize the amount of power that Deku has in relation to his father, being Trigon. And Deku would actually take more after his father in appearance over the years. Of course, Izuku is 4 years old right now, so here's how things would go. Izuku is not that strong. Izuku is quick to have a temper tantrum. He is quick to violence, honestly. And for the first couple of months, that was what caused a lot of attention to get onto Izuku. He would basically get into a lot of fights. He would end up getting into a lot of fights with these gangs. Next thing you know, he was fighting Yakuza. The reason why he was fighting Yakuza members were because they looked at him the wrong way. He wasn't really aware of everything that was happening in this world. Like, he was just placed into this world. He didn't know the rules, the customs, none of that. Of course, when he fought these Yakuza members, like, his physical strength was not on par with these guys. As a matter of fact, they were dominating against him. Like, he was getting crushed, to be honest. What ended up happening instead was that, well, I don't know how to say it. Basically, the authorities would eventually catch the Yakuza members and arrest them for basically child abuse. Izuku was also taken into custody. When they try and take a DNA scan and find his parents, they end up coming up with nothing. They find this to be odd, but they just assume that Izuku's parents are dead and that he doesn't have any close relatives. So they end up putting him into foster care. Obviously, just going by that, things don't go well at all. What ends up happening is that he will get picked on for the way that he looks. He will get picked on for the way he looks, the way his skin is just so pale. In comparison to other people, it's kind of sickly pale, to be honest, almost gray, to be honest. What also bothers these kids is the way his hair is. Like, the way it just seems to switch from black and white. Like, come on, dude. Just pick one. Like, at least I would be like, oh, like one side of your hair is white and the other side is black. That would be okay with them, but no. It's like one day, oh, Izuku's hair is mainly white. Another day, Izuku's hair is mainly black. Like, make up your mind, dude. So they would pick on him for his weird hair, his weird eyes, his weird skin. I would even say that Izuku would just feed into the negative emotions. He he would hate this foster care. He would hate the bullies. He would hate everything about these kids. He would just want to be free. He just wanted power. He was tired of getting picked on. Like, the whole reason why he ended up getting moved out to that dimension, he was taken away from his sister. The whole reason for that being because of his attitude for whatever reason, but he found that his attitude was fine. It was the people. He could tell that they were trying to control him. He hated being controlled. He hated getting picked on. One day, he just couldn't take it anymore and just released all of his negative emotions on them, on these bullies. I would say that Izuku is actually 6 around this time. The way that his the way that it is released is basically through pyrokinesis, seeing as that's actually one of Trigon's powers. Basically, hellfire, really. Obviously, it is much hotter than regular fire. It actually burns a lot of these kids to the point where there is no coming back from these burn marks. Actually, some of them would even lose some of their limbs because of Azuku's hellfire. That's how hot Azuku's hellfire is. And obviously, Deku's fire would be. Deku's fire would also cause Azuku's hair to become more white. What do I mean by this? I said before that the way Izuku's hair is, it would also be in relation to his father. Like, the more white his hair is, that means the more power that he has at the time. That's basically how I'm going to justify it. Of course, when his caretakers see what happened, they immediately panic, seeing all of these injured kids. Some of these kids are dying because of Izuku, because of what Izuku did to them, because of his pyrokinesis. They assume it was they assumed that he was a late bloomer, but at the same time, the way that he just awakened his quirk was just so terrible. One of the worst ways possible for him to awaken his quirk. So they had to let go of him. They couldn't afford to have such a risk within their foster care. They would basically throw Izuku out of their foster care. They would drop him in the forest, hoping that he would survive. They felt bad for a little kid, but they he was just too much of a liability, to be honest. Being able to awaken such powerful flames was impressive, but at the same time, that was incredibly dangerous. Like, they saw what happened back there. They, I just keep on repeating this because of just how terrible this was. Azuku just despises them, though. He, uh, he's not weak though. As months would go by, Azuku would try and train this power of his, this pyrokinesis, trying to figure out just what he can do with it. What he ends up finding out is that, yeah, sure he has pyrokinesis, but it's not like he can just use it from his hands. He can seemingly speak. He can basically spew from his mouth, like he basically has fire breath, essentially hell fire breath. He's also able to use his hands and create fire projectiles. He's also able to. He doesn't even have to touch a surface in order to cause fire to erupt. He can just be standing and create like a fiery aura around himself, which will cause the ground to erupt in fire as well, which Zuko finds to be pretty interesting. Izuku is actually pretty smart. He's very intelligent for a 6-year old, and he's able to actually survive very well in the wild to the point where nobody even realizes that Izuku is living by himself in the wild. That's crazy. Izuku is obviously strong. He also seems to have like this very weird connection to negative emotions. He just seems to feed on them for whatever reason. He just seems to get stronger every day when he thinks of negativity in the world. He just continues to feed on this negativity. And one day, he is just looking around the forest. He finds some food. He finds like a carcass some of some animal, like a deer, and it's basically surrounded by wolves. Azuku feels his stomach growl, and he doesn't even bother trying to really, approach these wolves. He has an interest. He wants to eat that. He wants to eat the deer. He wants to reach out for it and just grab it. All of a sudden, it just comes flying towards him. Izuku uses his fire in order to roast the deer, and the wolves look at him in anger because, well, the boy just took their meal. Izuku burns them alive as well. Of course, with all of this commotion happening, this actually gets the attention of the authorities. They actually find Deku and bring him back into police custody. When you find out what happened with him, they realize, okay, so he can't live he can't live in an orphanage. No, his powers are way too dangerous for that. So you know what happens instead? He ends up going to live with one of the heroes who know how to, manage fire quirks. They don't know anything about his telekinesis though, or any of his other abilities. That will soon come. What ends up happening is that Endeavor actually takes an interest in Deku due to just how powerful his flames are. He sees that he could actually raise this boy as his own, basically turn him into his next project for someone who would be able to, defeat All Might, basically able to usurp All Might, take over the number one spot. Obviously, he still has his eyes on Shoto, but if Shoto refuses to ever use his fire side, he would at least have somebody else. He would at least have a backup plan. That backup plan being Izuku. He would take Izuku in and actually raise him as his own. He actually reminds him of his son. He actually reminds him of his late son Toya. Yeah, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He actually reminds him of his late son Toya. He had actually pushed the boy too far, and that actually caused him to die. He still regretted his actions, but he wanted to test the water works with this boy. This boy already seemed very powerful. His flames rivaled his own. No, scratch that. They were way more powerful than his own. They seemed to just come from a different source entirely. This boy was shooting fire out of his mouth, being able to create a whole fiery aura that can literally spread to the rest of the ground. I mean, Endeavor would like to say that he's strong, but this boy was just on a whole nother level. He has never been able to use his flames to such an extent to where they're able to just spread that far. I mean, the man is literally covered in fire every single day, and he never seems to be able to, create such damage, create such powerful moves. Izuku at 6 years old is doing that. He's already doing better than Endeavor ever did throughout his whole hero career. He's impressed by this generation. What also impresses Endeavor later on is Izuku's continuous growth. He also seems to have like some sort of telekinesis, so he assumes that he has like a pyro telekinetic quirk, sort of like a half and half quirk, like his son, like his son Shoto. He would become even more interested in Izuku because of that, and the fact that Izuku just doesn't seem to have any limits. As a matter of fact, Izuku every day just seems to be stronger than he was before. The reason for this being because Izuku feeds on negative emotions. That's practically how he lives. He doesn't need to feed on anything else but negative emotions. That would sustain him, honestly. Like, he just continues to get stronger from these negative emotions, and considering the environment he's living in, he gets an abundant amount of it. This is an abusive household. Of course there would be a lot of negative emotions going around. This was basically like heaven for Izuku. This was like a feast for him. He would continue to feed on these negative emotions, continue to get stronger to the point where he was just easily able to defeat Endeavor in a match, at least when it came on to raw power. Endeavor still went up to Zuko when it came on to technique and experience. Shoto would just watch his adopted brother with contempt. Like, he kind of appreciated that. Well, I don't know how to say it, but basically, Izuku was getting more attention than Shoto. He was taking more beatings from Endeavor than Shoto was nowadays. Which, yeah, Shoto appreciated, but at the same time, Izuku just treated Endeavor like he was a good dad for whatever reason. He didn't understand that, considering just how abusive Endeavor was. He would literally have Izuku fight him every day. Sure, over the years, Izuku got stronger, very, very stronger, but at the same time, that's not how you treat a kid. Like, Izuku was like 10 years old. By the time these two were 10 years old, Izuku was just completely different. His whole aura had changed. He was much calmer, but at the same time, hmm, he was he was honestly a bit of a jerk, to be honest. He was quite a bit of a jerk to Shoto and the rest of his family, and he didn't care. He sees he saw everything he did as just. He knew that he was strong, and he liked that. He knew that he was strong. He knew that he could probably defeat All Might. He he figured he could defeat All Might in like a couple of years or so. But that's basically how I'm going to be ending it off for right now. I'm going to say that this is what happens. Azuku is stronger now. He so far has only unlocked like two of his abilities. He's only aware of his pyrokinesis and his telekinesis. He his hair is basically all white at this point though. And when it comes on to just how he is to all of his adopted family members, he's just a jerk in general. He takes more after Endeavor. He is obsessed with being number one, with being on top. People, what is happening, Tiny Clan? It is your boy KingTitanX back here with another video. As you can tell, I already got way more energy today. And just looking at this, you already know which what if we're going to be doing today. We are going to do part 2 of what if Deku was Raven's brother. In the last part, I just ended up mentioning his backstory. Basically, how he ended up in the Todoroki family and how he treated them. Now we're going to get on to some canon events. Basically, Deku would continue to discover more and more of his abilities as time would go on. The more he absorbed this negative energy from his family members. And not only that, he would get stronger as well. The stronger he would get, well, the more he would discover his powers. The powers that he would end up discovering during this time are, well, energy projection, or basically like energy manipulation. It wasn't just pyrokinesis and telekinesis he had. He also had It turns out that he also had energy manipulation, so he could basically absorb all forms of energy and manipulate that, basically able to make like sort of psychic weapons or something along those lines. Basically like energy constructs, really. Of course, he also has some sort of mind control. That's something that he finds interesting, and he definitely uses that to his advantage over time. But he focuses more on his physical abilities, not really the mental ones, since he finds them to be more flashy, cooler, all of those sorts. And of course, we would also end up having. No, he would definitely not meet Bakugo here. Instead, he is actually homeschooled, taught by some of the best teachers in Japan, really, because of Endeavor's influence, like how far his influence spreads. He is the number 2 hero of Japan, after all. Obviously, Deku would be very intelligent. He's not dumb here. I would say that he's probably, at the very least, unlike on the smartest side, he would be, at the very least, as smart as his canon self, if not even smarter. Of course, we will also have to mention, well, how Todoroki feels about this Shoto Todoroki. Yeah, he's still jealous of Deku and the fact that this kid just keeps on learning new abilities as time goes by. It seems like there is no sort of cap to his power at all. It just seems to be ever increasing. And he's jealous of that. So jealous to the point he even considers sometimes to actually train his fire side, but then quickly denies it, remembering what happened to his mother, remembering why he has this scar on his face, to always remind him of just how horrible of a person his father is. Although he doesn't get treated as badly as he used to be, thanks to Deku being around for Endeavor to actually train him instead. Endeavor took more of an interest in Deku than his own blood-related son, which ticks off Shoto a little bit, but he is still relieved to no longer have to, well, constantly go through that brutal training and actually live a sort of normal childhood. So, I would say that he is a bit more open. He's not as cold as he is in canon, at least for like the first 2 seasons. He actually can speak to people. He's not as shy or anything. Deku, on the other hand, he's just a plain savage. Yes, I said it. You guys heard me correctly. He is a savage. He is a savage in battle, that is. He is relentless. He makes sure that he wins every single battle. Even if it's to the death, he will win no matter what. Of course, Endeavor agrees with this mentality. He's like, okay, I approve. I approve of this. Strive for that #1 spot. I know you can do it, Deku. No, he wouldn't call him Deku. I know you can do this, Izuku. He just is just so supportive of Izuku to the point where it just really it shows that it really just shows who is his favorite kid out of the whole bunch. And it's not even one that is related by blood to him. It's not even one of his biological children. Which just makes the whole Todoroki household kind of hate him, to be honest. Also, no, Fuyumi is not going to be a ship here. Absolutely not. I'm just saying. What ends up happening here instead is Deku would be interested in just power. That's pretty much it. He doesn't have much more than that. He will also have dreams from time to time about this about this man who has red skin, 4 eyes, white hair like his, although straighter, less curly, and he has horns for some reason, and he's huge and ripped, of course. And he would say, Izuku, remember me. You are my son. Let me out. Bring me into this world so I can bring you back. Let me take over this world. He's basically trying to convince Izuku to become like a sort of gate for him to make it to Earth. To make it into his dimension so that he can take over that place and perhaps destroy it as well. Izuku doesn't really know about this though, at the very least not right now. He's still pretty young, but by the time he reaches 14, that's when things get interesting, because that's when the Sludge Villain attack happens. Obviously, he wouldn't be attacked by the Sludge Villain. Instead, he would encounter the Sludge Villain trying to take over somebody. And when he sees who it is, he sees like this blonde-haired dude with red eyes shooting explosions or something along those lines out of the palm of his hands while trying to break free of this Sludge Villain. Izuku is just absorbing this negative energy, and he's just sitting back. He's like, yeah, I should do something, shouldn't I? he doesn't really care about being a hero at all. He just cares about power. He just absorbs all of that negative energy no matter what. And when he feels full, he steps into the battlefield and is like, let me just test out my abilities really quickly. All the heroes are looking at Deku like, what are you doing? They're also kind of amazed looking at Deku because he's pretty tall. He's like 6'4" here. So his height already is impressive. And he also has a really good build. I wouldn't say that he's like extremely ripped or anything. More like he just has like a lean figure, and he's just wearing a tank top today. And so you can tell like he has like some good muscle definition and all of that. Obviously, and when the Sludge villain sees Deku, he's like, "Who are you? Who is this brat? Is this supposed to be like another hero? And what kind of suit is this? What kind of hero gear is this? Is it like your day off or something?" And he tries to direct the explosions towards Deku, trying to blast them off, trying to basically show them that, hey, you do not want to mess with me right now. Only for Deku to just lift up his hand and absorb all of the fire. Literally, literally like the fire that was burning down the buildings that one of those heroes was trying to extinguish. Boom, Azuku literally just extinguishes every single fire that was made because of Bakugo. And he just absorbs all of that. Fire is a form of energy. That's why I say that he absorbs all of it into himself. And just releases it all back at the villain. Oh, what do I mean by this? He literally just walks up to the villain, presses his hand against the villain, and releases all of the pent up fire into it. And of course, this fire is very, very hot. I would say that it actually comes out as black flames, like how do you say that word again? Like the Amaterasu from Naruto. Yes, I got to say that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just had to say it. Like, it was just a missed opportunity. But basically, with the fire being that hot, the Sludge villain's body begins to bubble up. You know how when you're basically boiling some water? That's what I mean by boiling. That's what I mean by bubble up. The Sludge villain's body is basically being boiled alive right now. Of course, the Sludge villain is screaming in agony, and the heroes are watching Izuku in fear. They're like, "What is this kid? What is this kid made out of? Who is this guy?" They're thinking this is like a fully grown adult. Can you blame them? This kid is walking around. He has like this white hair, this white curly hair, which I would say that is actually reaching down to his neck by now. And he also has these horns coming out of his head. It's like, what is this kid? Who is this guy? And looking at his height as well, all of that is just, I should not mess with him. I really should not mess with him. Do not mess with this guy. But of course, they are heroes and they have to step in, or else they wouldn't be heroes. They basically try and stop Izuku from what he's doing. But Izuku just looks at Bakugo. Bakugo looks at him. Izuku pulls him out of the Sludge villain so that he wouldn't be boiled alive as well. But the Sludge villain, he gets boiled alive to the point where he is just unconscious. I wouldn't say that Deku kills him, but he is very close to death right now. If he doesn't get medical attention soon, he is going to die. And Izuku just leaps out. He literally, not just leaps out. He uses his telekinesis to float and then literally just fly out of there. The heroes are trying to capture Deku, but it's already too late. He's way too fast for them. And this is all over the news. Of course, they would eventually figure out, oh snap, he is one of the kids of Endeavor, the number 2 hero. And then they start knocking on his door like, hey dude, what's up with that? Of course, though, well, Izuku gets pardoned because of Endeavor's influence. He doesn't get any jail time. As a matter of fact, so he just gets a slap on the wrist. And he has to do like community service for a little bit. For a little bit. But that's pretty much all he gets because he still did help out. Like sure, it was a sort of vigilantism, but he was using this quirk illegally, although it's not a quirk. They see it as a quirk. They don't know that these are like extraterrestrial abilities. Well, they didn't know about the true origin of his powers. Neither does Deku really. He just knows that he has these strong powers, and the heroes are also trying to figure out what kind of power, what kind of quirk does this kid have. Like, they've seen him use some pyrokinesis, they've seen him use telekinesis now, and now they're like, how does that work? And they're basically trying to figure out his abilities. Endeavor also tried to figure out his abilities a while ago, but just gave up. But that's pretty much how it went. He would do his community service by cleaning up the beach for 10 months. By the time he's finished, he is, of course, much bulkier as well. I would say that he is getting closer to Trigon's physique. But, well, of course, he would be closer to Trigon's physique and at the same time be discovering more of his powers. He would find out that he has like superhuman strength and durability, reflexes. He can also teleport. That's something that he finds incredibly interesting. That's something that he discovered during his 10 months of just cleaning up that beach, Dagobah Beach. Like he's trying to figure out how he can remove this trash faster, and he just thinks about like the dump, and all of a sudden he just finds himself in the dump with trash in his hands, and he's like, oh snap, say less. So he starts using the ability more often, although it's a bit draining for him at first. Obviously though, he does end up taking the entrance exam. I wouldn't say that he ends up taking a recommended though, because I'm going to say this. The recommendation exams, you can only recommend one person. You can only ever recommend one person. So, Endeavor ends up recommending his son, Shoto, because, well, at the end of the day, Shoto is basically like the kid that he wanted to have. Like he has the half hot, half cold, and well, he has the half hot, half cold quake like he always wanted, and he is also his biological son. Izuku has none of those traits. That's why he ended up going with Todoroki instead of Deku for the recommendation exams. But for Deku, he doesn't really care. Like he sees this as an opportunity, as an opportunity to really stretch out his powers. When he finds out what they'll be doing for the physical part of the exam, and this is just great for him. He's like, "Oh, thank you, Dad. Thank you for not recommending. Thank you for not recommending me instead of Shoto for those recommendation exams, because now I can really stretch out my abilities." He ends up using his pyrokinesis most often throughout the whole physical exam. He is just a beast, my guy. Like he's just he's sending off mouth blasts of fire. He's literally braining each and every single robot. If he's not using like mouth cannons or fire, he is literally picking up these guys with his telekinesis and just crushing them with that telekinesis. I wouldn't say that he has like reality alteration because that's just too broken, my guy. But he's basically crushing these guys. He's racking up points incredibly fast. So fast to the point where the teachers, they're looking at the screens and they're like, okay, we're going to have to bring in the 0 point robot early. They were planning on bringing out the the 0 point, the 0 pointer at the last minute. But they have to bring it in like 5 minutes into it because Deku is just taking up all the points. Like everybody else, they've only got like up to like the most probably like 15 points. Well, Deku has like around 80 to 90 points right now. And I'm just lowballing it right now. Like the teachers are trying to keep up with his score, but it's just so incredibly fast. Deku is also teleporting to all of these different locations within a battle. Like it gets so bad to the point where he's literally popping up in different areas where he's not even meant to be. The teachers are losing their minds right now because Deku has teleportation, telekinesis. He also has pyrokinesis, and he's using some sort of energy manipulation as well. He's absorbing all of that fire and then releasing it back again. It's like constantly. And this kid is just popping out with new abilities out of his hat. It's like, what is this kid made out of? They're looking at this kid's stats. They're looking at this kid's background history. And it's like, he is one of the kids of Endeavor. But here's the thing. He is adopted. That's where they lose their minds because, okay, this kid isn't even really Endeavor's biological kid. This kid is the adopted son of NG Todoroki. But what else does this kid have? Who are his biological parents? What made him to like who are his biological parents? That's basically what they're trying to figure out in order for him to have such strong abilities. And it seems like he has more than one quirk. That's what's crazy about everything. But by the end, look, when it comes down to the 0 point, do you think the 0 point has any chance against Deku? Absolutely not, because basically this happens. As soon as Deku sees the 0 pointer and he sees the girl is trapped under the rubble, he literally just he just uses some energy projection. He literally just shoots out of his eyes some. It's basically this. Deku looks at the 0 pointer. He feels his eyes itch for a couple of seconds. And then, boom. And like some sort of energy spreads out of his eyes. It shoots at the 0 pointer. Izuku also shoots fire at the 0 pointer. And it just completely destroys the upper half of the 0 pointer. It just completely annihilates the upper half. And the teachers are just looking at just facepalm, and they're like, we should really just take him out of the exams right now because at this rate, nobody else is going to have enough points to really to make it into UA. Barely anybody would be eligible to make it into UA with this freak of nature right here. They even trying to ask All Might, like, hey, do you know this kid? All Might shakes his head saying, no, I don't know who this kid is. I've never met this kid. Even when I've been to even when I've met the Todorokis before, even when I've had my interactions with some of the Todoroki children, I've yet to ever meet this kid, Izuku. And the teachers, they just sigh. And by the end, Deku has like around 152, no, like 250 points, my G. And that already just eclipses All Might's score when he was in UA. Um, yeah, that's basically how I'm going to end off that arc. Obviously, Deku makes it into UA with flying colors. Uh, Endeavor sees All Might on the screen and is like, when he hears that Deku made it into UA with flying colors, he's like, that's my boy. Good job, Izuku. And he pats his head. I'm pretty sure they're both around the same height right now. So Deku is actually sitting down when he hears the message, and Endeavor is the one standing up. When he hears the message, that's why he's able to just pat Zuku's head, and he actually rubs his hair, all of that. You know, like some sort of fatherly affection, something that he doesn't really give Shoto all that much. When it comes on to like the first day in UA, Shoto just sits in the corner, staring daggers at Izuku, and when it, well, actually, what happens here is Deku actually makes it to the school first. Like, uh, here's what happens. Shoto is basically, Shoto basically made it to the school before Izuku did. Izuku was actually really late. But Deku has teleportation here, so he doesn't really care. And he just teleports to the school at the last minute, walks into the classroom. Todoroki just stares daggers at Izuku because he knows that, well, Deku has teleportation. He could have made it at any time. He actually made it here just as soon as Todoroki was about to sit down. Everybody just looks at Deku in surprise. They're like, who is this kid? How did he just pop up here out of nowhere? Does he have like a teleportation quirk or something? That's what they're really all wondering at first. They didn't even see him walk in through the door. Ada tries to walk up to Izuku and introduce himself, but Izuku just completely ignores him. And it's like, hey, our teacher is like literally on the floor trying to sleep. He's in this yellow bag. And this yellow sleeping bag. And he's just waiting for us to quiet down, so they all look in surprise and find out that, yeah, Izuku was not lying. The teacher was even surprised. Aizawa was even more surprised because he thought he was pretty incognito. He thought he was pretty inconspicuous. Like, this is what he's been training for most of his life doing. And Deku was just able to pick up on it right away. He just popped up in here out of nowhere and just immediately said, hey. And he basically just says, hey, look, basically, I don't even know where I'm going with this. Yeah, basically, Deku just says this and that. Aizawa is surprised because Izuku just popped out of nowhere. But Aizawa does actually get up out of his sleeping bag and says, yeah, put on these uniforms. We're going to get ready and do like some sort of physical exam. Not physical exam. Basically, we're going to test out your quirks. See just how powerful your quirks are, like what you can do right now. Just going to test out how far you can reach right now. Ochako mentioned, or Raka basically mentions this. Hey, that's a bit unfair because I mean it's the first day. You shouldn't be going to orientation. As it says that, well, no. I am your teacher. The teachers at UA basically have free reign over how they teach their classes. And guess what we're going to be doing today? We're going to be we're going to be learning about your quirks. We're going to be finding out how your quirks work. Get onto the field, and if you aren't on the field by this certain time, you're going to be expelled. Put on these uniforms. Put on these gym uniforms. Let's go. Deku puts on his uniform as well, and the guys even mentioned like, "Hey, what is your workout routine, my guy? Like, you are buff, my dude. Like, look at these abs. I want those abs. Give me your abs. Give me your muscles, dude. What is your workout routine?" Kirishima is the one asking the most as well. He's like, "We should really spar, my dude. I want to see what you can do." He sees that Izuku must be strong. Bakugo just looks at Izuku and is like, "He looks familiar." No, this is not going to be a Deku X Bakugo ship, by the way. Instead, what we're going to do here is, well... Alright, let me know in the comments if you want like a Deku X Toga ship in here. Anyways, what we're going to do is... Deku just passes this exam with flying colors. The ball throw, infinity, 50-meter dash, he just teleports, which takes like 0.5 seconds. He beats even Ida's score. Like the long jump, he uses his telekinesis and literally just floats to the other side. Like grip test, he breaks a machine. I don't know how else. I really don't know what other exams were there. Like that slide jump. Yeah, no. Mineta still wins, lacking cannon. There's no ability that Deku has that is able to really compete with Mineta's quirk in that instance. Yeah, I'm going to say that's pretty much how it goes. But pretty much for every other exam there was, Deku just aces all of them. And he also has like a lot of energy. He has a lot of endurance, so even when it comes on to like that long distance running thing, like that endurance run I think they had at the end. Yeah, Deku, he just continuously runs to the point where most of the other kids are exhausted. Like the only other people that are on the field at that point are himself, Shoto, Momo, and Bakugo. Bakugo for the sole factor being, well, he doesn't want to lose. He's already lost multiple times to this kid, and this kid just keeps outdoing him in basically everything. He's supposed to be number one. But yeah, Deku just gets first place here. Mineta is in last place though. Because I remember like in canon he was at the very least 19th place. Deku was in 20th place. And if you think that I'm going to just let Mineta stay here, you're dead wrong. Aha, aha. I was always like, alright, pack your bags, go to the principal's office. You're expelled. The kids are like, hold up, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. You were serious? I was like, yeah, why would I joke about that? I was being dead serious. This kid is a pervert. He was too distracted looking at the girls in this class. And he didn't use this quirk to his full potential. So I found that he had zero potential. So guess what? He's getting expelled. And you are not worthy of being in the hero course. Goodbye. That's how it is. So sad. Momo is the most shocked out of everyone, while Deku just doesn't care. Like he's just absorbing all of that negative energy from Mineta. He's like, yes, cry, 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 you little cry baby. Mineta just leaves, and that's it. Let me list off some of the powers that Azuku has right now. I believe that he has pyrokinesis, telekinesis, um, teleportation, and energy manipulation. On top of that, he's also able to feed off of negative energy. What do I mean by negative energy? I mean more so negative emotions. So he's so obviously living with the Todoroki family for all these years, he is incredibly strong because there's a bunch of animosity between the members of that household. And everybody has some sort of negative emotion, so being able to feed off of that, it's like a constant meal for him. It's like he's always gaining more and more power. Every day he's becoming stronger. That's the most terrifying part about the ability. But now that we got that out of the way, let's go on to the next day of UA. Obviously, most of the things would stay pretty similar to in canon, except for the battle trial arc. Basically, when you're allowed to fight other people. Basically, when it is basically encouraged for you to fight your classmates. Yeah, that's the most hilarious part. I'm just realizing. But basically, here's how things will go. Deku obviously does not have the same costume like in canon. Instead, I would say that he just wears probably something similar to Trigon. Absolutely not. Now that I remember that he just wears like some cloth. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that Zuko wears like a black latex suit, a skin tight suit, and that's about it really. Maybe there's some gauntlets, but that's honestly about it. There's not much for him to really wear. Like, this guy is just so powerful. He doesn't need anything as some sort of support item. So that's why he went the basic route. He doesn't need to wear much of anything. I'm going to say here that things do get interesting. Like, most of the girls would look at Deku and be surprised at just how muscular he is. And they're looking at him and they're realizing, okay, so with this skin tight suit this boy is wearing, it's basically so tight on him. It's basically emphasizing all of his muscles. Yeah. Of course, the boys are still jealous, mad heated. Besides Kirishima thinks that Deku is actually cool here. He thinks that Deku may be pretty strong. He saw what he did at the Quirk Apprehension test, and he heard how he managed to take down the Zero Pointer. So he is obviously impressed with Izuku. Bakugo, on the other hand, he wants to fight Izuku really badly now. He wants to show that he is the superior one. He is the dominant one in this relationship. Not relationship. He is the dominant one here. He is superior to everybody else in Class 1A. That's basically what Bakugo is trying to prove here. But obviously, that's not going to happen. Because I'm the one who's doing this what if, obviously. And Deku is a son of Trigon. Well, a son of Trigon. What happens here, I would say, is pretty interesting. Why do I say interesting? It's pretty obvious. like they still get paired up. It's pretty much the same pairing as like in canon. Deku and Uraraka versus Bakugo and Ida. You think that Deku would actually teleport here though? No, he wants to have a good fight. He's going to actually let it go on for a while. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say that the roles are reversed here. So Deku is the villain actually. So this will just be him stalling the whole entire time. What happens is that while stalling, Bakugo is trying to find the bomb. He's using his explosions and he is angry. He's getting frustrated trying to search for the bomb. And Izuku is just waiting patiently in one of the rooms while Uraraka is on the other side protecting the bomb. Izuku is basically like a gatekeeper for the bomb. When Bakugo finally encounters Izuku though, Bakugo forgets all about his mission on trying to retrieve the bomb. Instead, he goes all out and tries to fight Izuku. You think that Bakugo would win here? Let's be honest. Do you? Bakugo tries to use his explosions, but the fire just immediately gets absorbed by Izuku. Bakugo is confused at first, but then his confusion is met with even more confusion when Izuku actually uses his telekinesis on Bakugo. Bakugo is very confused. He's like, what is this guy doing? What is happening to my body? Oh, why can't I move my body? Izuku isn't even moving his arms. He's just looking at Bakugo. And he just shifts his head to the left. Bakugo's body immediately hits the wall. Hits the left wall. Izuku moves his head to the right. Bakugo is basically thrown to the next wall. Izuku doesn't even bother moving his head anymore afterwards. He's just shifting his eyes and basically bashing Bakugo into the walls. Deku, he's just enjoying the moment, honestly. I would say that he does get bored though, and basically tries to knock Bakugo unconscious, but the boy gets up. He tries to use his explosions again. The force from the explosions are still there, but the burning part of the explosions are no longer there. Izuku absorbs all of the spikes from his explosions. Obviously, this does empower him, and he does end up making his own fire blast back at Bakugo. Bakugo ends up taking the full brunt of the damage, takes the full brunt of the fire that Izuku released on him, which is like 10 times more powerful than how it should have been. And Bakugo realizes that, okay, there's something up with this kid. There is something weird with this guy. This guy is just very incredibly strong for some reason. For no given reason. What is this guy's quirk? For crying out loud, tell me already. It seems like he has some sort of pyrokinesis and at the same time telekinesis. Is he a half and half or something? That's what Bakugo is trying to figure out here. I don't think there would be much to change here though. Because afterwards Izuku would probably just crush Bakugo. No. Izuku would throw Bakugo to the ground. And he would actually come charging at Bakugo. He would grab Bakugo by the neck and just throw him even further down the hall. And this is basically the straw that broke the camel's back. Bakugo is enraged. He's so enraged. He's angry. He's beyond furious here now. His bones are broken though. He pushes past the pain and tries to go all out on Izuku. He's using explosions. he ends up pulling the pin on his gauntlets, both of them actually, and tries to blast Zuko with them, thinking that Zuko has a sort of limit on just how much fire he can absorb at once. He doesn't, but he allows it to hit him actually. Only for him to just walk out of the flames saying, "That tickled." And that kind of warmed him up. And he gives a thumbs up to Bakugo saying, "Thanks." Bakugo is exhausted here, and he's confused. What the heck is this kid made out of? What are his parents feeding him? He wants some of that. This kid seems to be like the reincarnation of All Might, for crying out loud. Is he like some sort of government experiment that mixes All Might's DNA with Endeavor's and all of that good jazz? Or what? He doesn't understand it. I focus way too much on this fight though. Look, basically that's all I have to say for right now in terms of how it goes with Uraraka and Ida. Deku literally just teleports there as soon as Ida makes it to where the bomb is, and at the same time, Uzuka also finished his fight with Bakugo. It was slightly amusing for Izuku. He could have been stronger though. He was very used to fighting people like Endeavor on the daily, so that's why he found it to be a bit of a drag, to be honest. He was expecting more from a person like Bakugo, who seemed to be very cocky for no apparent reason. In his eyes, at the very least. He saw Bakugo to be very, very weak. And obviously we know that he isn't, but Deku's just on a whole nother level. He teleports and grabs Ida by the face and just pins him down to the floor, immobilizing him. And this basically has it so that All Might has to say the villains win. Everybody is impressed with how Izuku was able to easily handle both Ida and Bakugo, and he would have gotten MVP if it weren't for the fact that he was fooling around too much. And it turns out that, well, nobody really gets an MVP here. That's a lie. Deku does get the MVP here. It's just that, well, he fooled around too much. He should have quickly subdued Bakugo from before. And Deku just turns a blind eye to this. He just lets it go in one ear and go out the other. That's basically it for Izuku. Now, things are interesting in where I would say that the next thing we have on the list is the USJ. Because when it comes on to the election, I'm basically trying to figure out like class rep. I would say that it goes pretty similar to in canon. And Deku just ends up giving the role to Ida. He doesn't really care for that role, to be honest. As a matter of fact, he could live without it. He really doesn't want that role. He finds it to be too much responsibility for too little outcome. For too little of an outcome, honestly. On top of that, when it came on to how everybody treated this whole invasion, this whole trespassing fight, everybody was fleeing, everybody was panicking, everybody was scared and in confusion. Izuku was eating it all up, honestly. All of these negative emotions were just like a buffet for him. Yeah. What happens next is going to be the USJ. The USJ is interesting in where this is the first time they are actually have to face real villains. Well, for the most part, anyways. I would say that things will not go the same as in canon. As a matter of fact, it goes way different than in canon because I have plans here. Oh, jeez. This is where things get interesting because because there is a limit to just how much negative energy Azuku can store before he has to release it. Like, he can continuously get stronger from this negative energy, but he has to release it somehow. That's the thing about all of it. It's like a piggy bank. Eventually, it gets full, and you need to release some money out of it. Azuku released it in like short bursts, which made it seem as if he was constantly getting more and more powerful by the day. But in actuality, it was because of those negative emotions that were being held inside of him. All of that mix of negative emotions being released. Of course, this is where things get interesting because of just how bad it is. All of these villains popping out of the portals and everybody being scattered, that makes people scared. Like, these kids are scared of what is going to happen to them. They are scared of the unknown. And Izuku is just feasting on all of this fear. He's feasting on the fear of the kids. He's feasting on this rage from some of these villains. And then he realizes, hold up, there's this one guy. This one doesn't even seem human. That's what he's realizing. He's looking at the Nomu, and he realizes that this guy just doesn't seem natural at all. Obviously, this is where things will get much more interesting. I wouldn't say that Deku doesn't actually end up on the ship with Mineta and Suyu. As a matter of fact, what actually ends up happening is they are trapped. When they actually do end up somehow making it out though. But, well, here's the thing. No, they died. I'm sorry to say this. I know for all you Suyu fans, you're going to be very angry with me with this video. But I don't see a good way for them to have actually made it out of there alive. Suyu tried her best here, but things just did not work out for her. She did not have somebody to help her. Somebody with a useful quirk like Izuku's own that could make pressures that strong. Hey. These villains, they capture her and they basically end her. They end Mineta as well, so all of you Mineta haters, you can be happy now. You can cheer. You can be like, hurrah! A Titan-san did us a favor, or something along those lines. I don't really care. And another thing on top of this, here's what happens. Azuku actually hears the screams of the two when they are basically when their lives are being ended, basically. On top of that, what happens here is Azuku recognizes that voice. He realizes who it is. He's like, oh dang. No, Izuku is actually kind of angry here because they are actually his classmates, and he actually didn't mind her all that much. She seemed to be friendly. She was cool. She was alright. She was alright in this book. They weren't necessarily the best of friends or anything, but It hurt him, honestly. He never expected to have these emotions come out of him for some reason. And he's angry now. He goes and tries to basically help out Aizawa. Aizawa tries his best in order to, well, take down Shigaraki, but that's when the Nomu appears and actually pummels him to the ground. He's basically treating him like a rag doll, basically bashing his face into the floor, causing him to bleed from his forehead, all of that. Izuku is getting angrier and angrier. He can feel his blood boiling, and he can't take the anger anymore. He can't take these negative emotions anymore. He's usually able to keep himself in a moderate enough mood in order to maintain this negative energy he gets on the daily. But right now, he's feeling a mix of emotions he's never felt before. And that's what actually causes him to go ballistic here. He goes so ballistic, it's crazy. I'm going to try and find an image for it real quick. Like father, like son. Izuku basically grows in stature. He becomes incredibly large here. On top of that, his muscles grow as well. His horns, they become exactly like what is shown. Everything that I'm showing you right now. This is exactly how Izuku looks right now. Everybody looks on in horror at what they are seeing. They are surprised at what they're seeing. Izuku grabs Inomu in his arms. Well, in one of his hands. He grabs it and basically screams in its face. He he's absolutely lost it. He has lost his sanity at this point. He can't control his emotions anymore. Like, he's always had a decent amount of grip on his emotions up until now. What's happening now is that he is losing it. He can't control his emotions, and because of it, he has gone into this state. He's gone into this form of absolute monstrosity. All this negative energy that's built up inside of him, he's usually able to release it in short bursts. But right now, he's built up too much. He's absorbed too much negative energy, and he's he's creating negative energy of his own. All his energy mixed up together and doesn't make a good thing. As a matter of fact, this is probably your worst nightmare coming to life right now. What exactly do I mean by this? It's exactly what I mean. There's nothing. There's not much to really explain here, besides the fact that Trigon is also seeing this. He's basically feeding Izuku more power as well. Basically, also feeding more power to Izuku's rage. This rage Izuku feels, this regret, everything that Izuku is feeling right now. Trigon realizes that a rift is opening up because of all of this release of negative energy. But all of this release of negative energy is crazy. Uh, Trigon is smiling. He with his rift opening up, he's basically trying to poke his finger in, trying to also rip open that rift, trying to get in. But here's where things get interesting. I did say that Deku is the brother of Raven, like twin brother actually. This is when things get interesting. Like, I've already stated that Deku is Raven's brother. They came from the same mom. Um, Some people were asking me about this before. This is where things get interesting. I've said this so many times now. This is where everything is just badonkulous. Because with this rift opening up, somebody feels this negative energy. Somebody feels this crazy amount of energy being released into the world right now. And it's actually affecting the streets. It's basically affecting the crime rate. It's basically affecting everybody right now. And they're trying to find the pinpoint of everything. They're trying to find the pinpoint, trying to find the source of this release of negative energy that is basically mutating everybody on the streets into these weird monstrosities, basically also causing the roads to blow up. In the sorts, basically causing cracks in the roads, causing earthquakes, causing tsunamis, and causing windstorms, all of that mess. It's ridiculous. They are searching. They're trying to find out everything. They're trying to get a good grasp on what's happening. And they zoom out of America. They start off in America. They leave. And they also go with their teammates. And they're trying to also find a source of negative energy until they find out where exactly it is. If you're wondering who this is, it's Raven. Raven is searching for this negative energy source. She ends up finding out where it is soon enough. She finds out the location is in Japan, of all places, which intrigues her. She wasn't expecting for there to be such a source of negative energy in Japan, of all places. And on top of that, it's so bad that it's actually even causing a rift, or causing a dimensional rift, which allows her father to actually start to break into Earth. She can practically feel his hand starting to go in, starting to basically tap into the Earth, which is making things even worse than it was before. She has to put a stop to this before it's too late. Like the last time she had to ever face her father, it was in her nightmares, and in her nightmares it was absurd. She could barely handle him in her nightmares. She didn't know how strong. She didn't know how powerful he would be in this dimension. She didn't know if she could actually force him back. It took everything out of her to just lock him out of her life, lock him out of her dreams, trying to get him to stop talking to her in her dreams, basically trying to influence her in her dreams. It took her and her teammates in order to basically fight out Trigon in her dreams. She didn't know who this person was, and that was releasing all of this negative energy. Although the energy did seem a bit familiar. Almost too familiar for some reason. She ends up making it to the USJ. Cyborg is there as well. Cyborg and Starfire make it there as well with her, and they see what is happening. They don't know. They were not expecting this. They were not expecting to see a person like Izuku here. Like, they're looking at the whole area, and Izuku is crushing the Nomu in his hand. In just one hand. He is so absurdly large right now. Like, he just overshadows the USJ. He overshadows all other buildings. And that's exactly what they're trying to fight against now. It's taking everything. And the strangest thing about all of this is the fact that this energy, despite this person looking so similar to Trigon, the energy doesn't seem right. It's just it's just different from Trigons in general. Like there are some similarities to it, but there's enough differences in it to make it unique. Make it to where it isn't Trigon's own energy. Although she can feel the influence of Trigon's energy in there, and she is basically trying to put a stop to it now. She's basically trying to go against this energy, basically trying to fight off whoever is in control right now. She's basically trying to help whoever. She's basically trying to help everybody by ending this negative energy being released into the world right now, because it's causing chaos on the streets. It's causing a rift in dimensions. She's even looking up at the sky right now, and she can see the sky is starting to crack. That's when she knows she has to stop things before he gets out, before he is able to truly break out of his dimension and wreak havoc on Earth. She can't afford that to happen. So last part I ended off with Raven, Cyborg, and Starfire all making it to USJ, where they basically find a monstrous version of Izuku, basically squeezing the life out of the Nomu. And all the streets, it's chaos out on the streets because Izuku is releasing so much negative energy that it's basically been mutating the civilians, basically exploding the streets, all of that. So Raven has been, for like the past 3 minutes, been trying to Raven has been trying to put an end to Izuku. Not necessarily kill him, but more so basically trying to help her little brother out. Raven was the firstborn. More like this. Raven, here's the thing with Raven. She came out of the womb 5 minutes before Izuku. That's it. So she is the older sibling here. But Izuku doesn't really care. Izuku does not care. He doesn't even know who his sister is. He just sees that there's this weird, gray-skinned woman that just appeared in front of him, wearing like this dark purple little cloak of the sorts. When she's not going to lie, it looks kind of cool, but at the same time, he still does not care who she is. He has just went ballistic. He has lost his mind here. But for some reason, she's able to somehow contain him. This is the first person that he's ever met that's ever been able to actually be able to somehow even remotely control him. Everybody else was always too weak for him. So he's wondering who she is. She's looking at these other two strange people. One looks like a robot of the sorts, but with like some human qualities to him, but mainly robotic. Was he a cyborg of the sorts? And then there was like this tan / orange girl who he wouldn't lie. She does look. She's not hard on the eyes. She's pretty easy on the eyes. She's relatively attractive in Izuku's eyes, but that's not what he's focusing on right now. he's focusing on trying to swat away these guys. He's basically trying to get these guys off of him because for some reason they're just on another level of strength. They are the first people he's ever met that can actually hold a candle to him. And even then, like, when I say hold a candle, it's more so that Raven is the one that's doing most of the work here. She is using all of her spell binding tricks. She's using all of her binding tricks right now in order to control Izuku. Eventually, she starts to use some siphoning abilities. She realizes that he's been absorbing too much negative energy, so she's basically trying to remove that out of Izuku's system. As for Starfire and Cyborg, they're basically like damage control right now. They're basically making sure that nobody in the USJ gets hurt from Izuku's attacks, because Izuku has gone pretty ballistic right now. I keep on using ballistic for no reason. Izuku is just overpowered right now. And Starfire and Cyborg, they can't really do much against Izuku. This is more so Raven's territory, so they're basically here as support. Eventually, All Might does arrive and sees the mess that they're in. He tries to help, but come on already. No. Let's face it already. There is nothing that All Might could do here. That's pretty sad. There's nothing All Might could do. All Might also ends up becoming damage control. He ends up being a bit of the support here. He basically knocks out the rest of the villains. People like Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Kiri. You know who I'm talking about. They basically try to escape. Snipe ends up shooting them like in cannon. And he tries to shoot Izuku as well. Because he doesn't know what this creature is. All it is to until like, don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. That's Izuku. Snipe actually holds back his bullet and is like, what? Some of the students try to explain the whole situation and explain like these guys, this cyborg looking dude, this red-haired girl, and this one in the purple cloak. They all just came out of here. They all came here out of nowhere. They basically flew from the sky downwards, and all of a sudden they tried to take control of Izuku. After he went into this demon-like state, they're basically the ones who have been able to really control him so far. They've basically been the ones that were able to really do anything against Izuku. Snipe nods and is like, okay, we're gonna have to talk about this later, but for now, let's see what these guys can do. Of course, they're going to try and, help with Izuku's situation. They even bring in Midnight, and she actually is used to help against Izuku, trying to knock out Izuku. She releases her gas of the sort, her pheromones. I don't know what to call it, but when she releases her sleeping gas, it actually causes Cyborg and Starfire to also be knocked out. As for Raven, she sees what's going on. She realizes it's sleep gas and it's like, hey, I can actually use this. So she actually uses Midnight sleeping gas to her advantage and increases the amount of it. She increases the extent of the sleeping gas to the point where it's able to actually reach up to Izuku, and she makes it strong enough to where she actually mutates the sleeping gas. it's mutated to where it will cause him to sleep and also remove this negative energy from Izuku because he's absorbed way too much of it. He is too much like their father in that aspect where he is just going to be made up of negative energy. All this negative energy was bad for Izuku. Too much of one thing is good. Too much of one thing isn't good for you. That's basically what Raven has realized looking at Izuku. So that's what she's trying to do. By the end, she is actually successful in being able to take down Izuku, but she is exhausted. She is tired. She is extremely tired right now. And she ends up going to sleep as well on the floor. She was flying at first, but she just dropped down to the ground unconscious. All Might is actually able to catch her in mid-air, thankfully. But they don't know anything else. When Raven wakes up, she realizes that she is in a room by herself and some of the police officers alongside some of the heroes. They're basically trying to interrogate her. She explains the whole situation and how she is from America and she is basically a Teen Titan. Now, for those who don't know, in this universe, the Teen Titans are basically going to be a group of heroes of the sorts. More like Cyborg is the oldest out of the group, but not necessarily the leader. He's more so the one that's actually able to. Alright, look. It's basically like this. We have the Justice League. The Justice League has Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman as the Trinity. But they're not necessarily the same versions that we know of in the DC universe. Batman is relatively the same. He doesn't really have much power. It's more so that he does have a quirk in this universe, and that is what's able to help him be able to perform all those incredible feats of strength and speed, just combat in general. He basically has a high durability sort of quirk. High durability and strength. He basically has an enhanced body kind of quirk. As for Superman, same thing. He just has what he has in canon. Regular Superman, except that it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's basically that his body is that of an alien. He's meant to have a lot of quirks, but this was because of the fact that this was an experiment made by the US government. So when it comes on to Wonder Woman now, she also has a quirk, which allows her to fly and do all of those feats of strength that she's able to do. Yeah, that all comes down to her quirk, which is basically like a tactile telekinesis of the sorts. And she also has a psychokinetic. Forget it. She has telekinetic abilities. It's just that she uses it differently than others, and would expect her to use it. As for the rest of the Justice League, they're basically made up of like the top heroes throughout all of the states of America. And they basically have their own quirks as well. Batman doesn't have the strongest quirk, but he makes up for it in his intelligence. He has a high amount of intelligence. which makes him one of the more dangerous members of the Justice League. He's also very rich, mainly because of his parents, and well, it's like this. Batman is still incredibly rich, like insanely rich. He's still a billionaire. He's a billionaire playboy. But this is also because of the fact that he is a hero. He has an income. He has a steady income coming in, alongside the fact that he has his own business on top of being a hero. So he's making double the income. As for on top of the fact that his parents did die and they were very wealthy as well, so Bruce Wayne, he was the sole inheritor of their fortune. And that's basically how the things are. He basically set up the Teen Titans and the Young Justice League. Basically like this. They're meant to be a sort of small superhero team of the younger generation. They're like 16 to 19 year olds, basically the ones that are still in high school. They're basically meant to be the ones to help out, trying to make sure that they gain experience from young, in order to make sure that when they do end up hopping into the whole professional hero league, they won't end up screwing up. They will have a good amount of experience in order to look out on their own. But for right now, they will be working in teams. And that was what the Teen Titans were meant for. That they would be working in teams until they would graduate from high school, or at least reach that high school graduate age, and get there and basically be considered true heroes. Raven is still a hero in training in this universe. That's basically how it is. That's what she explained to like all of the Japanese officers and heroes. And of course, she does know how to speak their language as well. Obviously. Because she is multilingual. Even though she wasn't, she just knows spells that can make her multilingual. What they don't know is that she is not necessarily completely human. As a matter of fact, she is half human. They don't know that she's part demon. They don't know anything about Raven's background with her powers. They just think that she has like some sort of dark manipulation kind of quirk. And she's like, yeah? Sure, let's roll with that. That's basically how it is for Raven, and that's also the same for the other Titans as well. They basically all explain that, hey, we are from America, we are part of the Teen Titans, all of that. And they actually let them go when they actually talk to Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. They actually hit up the headquarters of the Justice League in order to make sure that they were telling the truth. Sure, they had to stay for a couple of days, but when they realized that, hey, Raven wasn't lying, they're like, okay, bet, you're free to go. And Raven actually meets up with Izuku, who is much smaller now. She's actually surprised to see how small he is right now. She was expecting him to be much, much larger, especially considering the fact that the first time she ever saw him and can remember seeing him, he was a hulking giant. And that was basically roaring, basically destroying everything within the vicinity, basically corrupting the streets, all of that. But Izuku is calm now. And when I say small, he's just under 6 foot. So, not necessarily small, but small in comparison to what she saw. she ended up greeting Izuku, and the way that she was able to even recognize Izuku was from his aura and the fact that he does have these horns, which are an unusual trait, even for mutant type quirk users. Not many of them really have horns. So she's like, "So, what's your name?" Izuku introduces himself as Izuku Todoroki, and Raven introduces herself as simply that, Raven. And she mentions how he seems to have a familiar aura for some odd reason. They start talking, and they eventually realize that, okay, oh snap, we are related. We might actually be related, because Izuku actually ends up mentioning some of his dreams. Raven realizes that, hey, I used to have some of those dreams as well. So for those 2 weeks that they were off from school, they would basically be training with each other. They would train and help Izuku to basically lock out his dreams from Trigon, their father. That was their main goal at the time. By the end of the 2 weeks, sure, they were able to be mostly successful, but Izuku would have a bit of visions of Trigon still, but he wasn't really able to talk to Izuku in his dreams anymore, or even move in his dreams anymore, have any influence over Izuku's dreams anymore. He was just there. And they would try and fix that though, but for right now they had the sports festival to worry about, because of the fact that Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg aren't necessarily in UA. They wouldn't be allowed to participate in the sports festival. Sure, they could watch, but that was all. And this is where things get interesting, because obviously your boy Izuku will still dominate throughout the whole sports festival. Raven would be there just to monitor Izuku, make sure that he doesn't absorb too much negative energy. That's what she was actually teaching Izuku throughout their training as well, not to absorb too much negative energy. As a matter of fact, to not absorb negative energy at all, because he was just passively absorbing that negative energy, and he was absorbing more than he could let out during the USJ. So she made sure to put an end to that before that whole event could happen again. But still, she would be there just to monitor Izuku. Same for Raven and... No, not Raven. Same for Starfire and Cyborg. That's what I meant to say. They would watch Izuku throughout the sports festival. Izuku was able to dominate. That's probably one of the most interesting things about it. Izuku was able to take down everybody throughout the sports festival. He would, in the very first fight, Izuku was able to take down Todoroki, Bakugo. He was basically able to get through the obstacle course like it was nothing. All of those robots, he was basically using his energy manipulation, destroying those robots like they were like hot butter knives. Like, you know, those videos on YouTube from a couple years ago, like 9,000 degree knife cutting through this thing, that thing, all that. That's basically what was happening with Izuku. He was shaping his arms into these energy blades and chopping through all of these robots. And when it came onto that tightrope, Izuku just jumped over it. He didn't even bother using his telekinesis to fly over it. None of that. Even when it came on to just the mines as well, Izuku was sturdy enough to where they just did not affect him. he didn't even bother flying anymore. Bakugo was trying to get the lead on Izuku, same for Todoroki, but none of them were fast enough to actually keep up with that tank of a human being. Izuku actually ended up making it in first place without even using most of his abilities, not even a quarter of them, honestly. He still has a lot untapped potential. That he kind of refuses to use right now as well. He was able to just walk through that minefield as if it was nothing. When it came on to the cavalry battle, Izuku was using telekinesis to make sure that everybody was floating, and he just took their headbands. He was able to just stack up on everybody's headbands. It was just so absurd just watching that whole event happen that they basically had to make a rule that Izuku cannot use his telekinesis after the first half. Of course, Izuku didn't have a problem with that still, and just made energy projections. He would just shoot energy and his opponents, anyone that would get close to him, they wouldn't be able to do anything against him. And of course, Izuku is on the bottom here because there's no way that these guys would be able to lift Izuku. Izuku is probably like 300 pounds of muscle right now. Yeah, absurd, I know. But who cares? Lean muscle as well. I should have pointed that out as well. But yeah, cavalry battle. Izuku took home first place for both rounds. The heroes are looking at Izuku and they're like, okay, who is this kid? Wait a second. He is the adopted son of Endeavor, the number 2 hero. That's fascinating. What the heck was Endeavor feeding this boy? What kind of steroids was this guy feeding this boy throughout his childhood? Because they're looking at Todoroki, the bloodborne son of NG Todoroki, and they're like, how that work? Because the Todoroki is strong. Don't get me wrong. Todoroki is incredibly strong, but Izuku is just overshadowing Todoroki in every regard. When it came on to the matchups, all those fights, Izuku is just handing out L's throughout the whole fight. When he had to fight Shinso was really considering giving up immediately because he's like, I don't want to mess with this guy, but he still wants to make it into the hero quest, so he still tries to make Izuku talk. Unfortunately, that doesn't work on Izuku because of the fact that he's just went through a lot more, and everything that Shinso tries to say just makes him sound really, really pitiful in Izuku's eyes. Like, you were lucky to be born with a quig. You were lucky to be born this strong. You were lucky. Izuku in his head is like blah, 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 and just shoots him with some eye rays. He does not really care at all for what Shinso has to say. And he even says that afterwards. He says, if you want to complain about how you have dealt a bad hand in life, well, go ahead. I don't really care, because that won't change anything. You need to step up. Look at people like Aizawa, not Aizawa, but look at people like Eraserhead. Look at people like Mandalay, for crying out loud. Like, I remember, like, the last time that we left off with this what if. Basically what happened was that Raven ended up meeting her brother, and she actually trained him in and actually mastering his abilities to where he wouldn't just constantly be absorbing negative energy, considering what happened back at the USJ. And Deku's actually nicer now as well. That's something I forgot to comment on. I think Deku actually became nicer because of that. That seemed to have an effect on his personality, the amount of negative energy that he was absorbing into himself passively throughout the days. Because of all the negative energy they were absorbing, it had an effect on his mentality, on his emotions, all of that. So that's basically what ended up changing, on top of the fact that Deku's still able to dominate throughout the sports festival, unlike Canon. If you wanted to know exactly what he did, be sure to watch the last part over again and up them views. But I ended up leaving off on Deku about to fight Todoroki, his foster brother. I'm gonna call it foster brother because adoptive brother sounds more of a mouthful. But yeah, basically what happened is that Deku would be able to fight Todoroki. Todoroki would try and fight Izuku, but Izuku is just too strong for Todoroki in general. Whenever Todoroki tries to use his ice powers against Izuku, Izuku would just use like his fire manipulation, his energy manipulation abilities in order to literally just melt the ice. And it's just like a wave of water just hits Izuku. Unless he decides to up the heat on the energy blasts, and it just becomes, well, simply put, steam. It just evaporates, honestly. Todoroki would grow frustrated, and Izuku would say that, yeah, Todoroki, you have no way of winning against me. This is something that you should know. And Todoroki would tell Izuku to just shut his mouth, and that he would win against him no matter what. He is sick of his antics. He's sick of Izuku. And he just always seemed to get more attention than him for whatever reason. From like the worst person imaginable as well. Endeavor, he didn't understand why he would even like Endeavor, especially with all that he did to their family. He just broke up their family, everything. That's why Todoroki doesn't like Izuku, because not necessarily because of Izuku himself, but because of Endeavor. He hates his father, and because of his hatred towards his father, that ends up getting projected onto Izuku as well. Izuku notices this negative energy that Todoroki is just exuding, and would try to reason with him, try and explain that he doesn't really know what exactly Endeavor did to Todoroki. He doesn't know why Todoroki really hates him. To him, like, sure, he may have been strong and all of that. He may have maybe pushed him around a little bit, but overall, he didn't see that Todoroki really had much of a good reason to hate him. He understood why he would probably hate Endeavor after he tried explaining everything that Endeavor probably did to him. But Izuku still doesn't see why Todoroki hates him exactly. The fight will go on. Izuku will continue to dominate. Every time Todoroki uses his ice, the same thing happens, and Todoroki grows more and more frustrated throughout the whole fight. Izuku would just look at Todoroki and just look in disappointment, honestly. Because in Todoroki, he was meant to be strong. Like, he was literally bred to be strong. But Izuku was just bred to be something different. He was just something entirely different. And from his talks with Raven, it turns out that he was like part demon or something along those lines. So that ended up being something interesting to Izuku as well. he couldn't really compare himself to Todoroki because, well, Deku isn't even completely human to be honest. And so like when it comes onto strength, his views on strength are completely different to Todoroki. Todoroki would try and try again. Something that Deku had to acknowledge about Todoroki was the fact that he did not give up. That was something very admirable about Todoroki throughout this fight. Every time that Deku tried to push him down, and Todoroki would continue to get up, even when he was starting to get frostbite all over his body. He was still trying to fight Izuku, although in a pretty terrible manner. He was literally just spamming ice attacks at Izuku. Izuku ended up literally just using his telekinesis on Todoroki at one point and just lifted him up into the sky. He glared at Todoroki saying that, "Alright, here's the thing, little kid. There is absolutely no point in trying to just spam these ice attacks anymore. Use your fire side to at the very least warm your body up. Because at the rate that you're going to probably die." And he was actually starting to squeeze Todoroki in his telekinetic force field of the sorts. Todoroki would start to feel his muscles starting to tighten. He would start to feel very, very constricted and would try to move, but, well, simply put, Izuku was dampening his powers. Well, dampening his movement, I should say, not necessarily powers. Todoroki would eventually be forced to use his fire side. He'll be forced to use his fire sign, and when he does, he launches it at Izuku. Izuku actually smiles seeing this and is like, "Good job, brother," and then just throws him to the other side using his telekinesis. He doesn't even move his arms throughout the whole entire fight. He literally just stands still the whole entire fight. He just has his arms folded, just watching Todoroki, even using his telekinesis, and to have an effect on Todoroki. When he throws him, he doesn't throw him out of the ring. He just throws him to the other side of the other ring. I shouldn't say ring, but more like the platform, I guess. Because we've seen that it's more of a square, more like a rectangle, than a ring, a circle. But it's whatever, really. Todoroki would get up, pick himself up, and launch another fire attack at Izuku. But this one was incredibly powerful and heat. There was an incredibly intense amount of heat from the fire that Todoroki was producing. It actually managed to warm Todoroki's whole body up to an extreme amount. And he ended up using his ice side as well, causing like a rapid expansion of air. To basically cause a burst of energy to be released, which was enough to actually throw both Todoroki and Izuku back. Izuku ended up using his telekinesis in order to stop himself from falling out of the ring, and actually flies back, and he actually even picks up Todoroki as well, brings him back to the ring before they can even get too close from making it out of the ring. He doesn't want the fight to be over just yet. He wants to fight Todoroki some more now that he is using his fire side. He's using both sides of his quirk. He knows that Todoroki may not necessarily be as strong as himself, but he could be some form of good entertainment. He wanted to see just how far Todoroki was willing to go, because this was probably like the most alive Todoroki had ever been in Izuku's eyes, and he appreciated that. He wanted to see just how far Todoroki could go. He would try and try. Todoroki would continue to use more of his fire. Todoroki would even start sending out fireballs. He would have to quickly adapt. He would have to quickly learn how to use his fire side in this battle, because Izuku was basically dominating and he wouldn't let Todoroki just lose yet. Todoroki was getting exhausted. He used fireballs. He sent rays of fire. He used everything in his arsenal, anything that he could think of, in order to actually pose a sort of challenge towards Izuku, although he knew that the likelihood of him even winning this battle at this point was very low, especially with how he was low on energy. He was using his eyesight as well, trying to make another one of those moves, trying to blast him back, but Izuku wasn't having it this time. Todoroki would just use his ice in order to hopefully distract Izuku, then use his fire side in order to send a blast at him. Izuku actually took one of those blasts at one point, and Todoroki had a bit of hope that actually worked on Izuku, only for the smoke to dissipate and show that Izuku was unharmed. He actually absorbed that fire, and he just sent it right back at Todoroki, but 10 times stronger, for crying out loud. Anyways, after like a good 20 to 30 minutes of more fighting, Izuku would finally let Todoroki just lose and just fall out of the ring, and Todoroki would fall down in exhaustion. He would actually go unconscious from being so tired and overusing his quirk. Both sides of it. The next battle would be Izuku versus Bakugo. Izuku wouldn't have much of an interest for Bakugo, honestly. Izuku would just go ahead and just pimp slap Bakugo away. Bakugo would just use his explosion quirk in order to stop himself from falling out of the ring. What he would do instead is to actually send more explosions. He would send more explosions towards Izuku, but I don't know how to say it. Where was I? Oh yeah, I basically was mentioning Deku versus Bakugo. Bakugo would try and send more explosions at Izuku after he made sure that he didn't fall out of the ring. But Izuku's intimidating presence, his overbearing presence, it just wouldn't really work on Izuku. Bakugo's explosions would simply be absorbed, although the force of the energy wasn't able to be absorbed by Izuku. The fire part of that ability, that was actually absorbed into Izuku. Izuku would just send his explosions back, just not necessarily with the force of the explosions. Oh my gosh, the airplane. So basically what ended up happening was, with the force of the explosions, that wouldn't be absorbed by Izuku. Izuku would send back the flame part of the explosions, the burning aspect of the explosions, back at Bakugo. Bakugo would be unable to really match against that. He wouldn't be able to really be able to block them. He wouldn't be able to tank the explosion energy, the burning aspect of his explosions being sent back at him with 10 times the force. But what he was able to do was to actually dodge them. He was actually able to fly up into the sky using his explosions and he would actually end up trying to use the howitzer impact on Izuku, only for Izuku to just cancel out that whole ability of Bakugo's. one of Bakugo's ultimate moves just immediately being cancelled by Izuku because he ended up absorbing all of the fire from the impact. And of course, it just wouldn't work without the fire. Without the fire, he's unable to actually really do much of anything anymore. With everything being absorbed, he only had the kinetic force of the energy left, but that was already throwing Bakugo off without the fire aspect. Without the fire aspect, there was nothing left. The kinetic force wasn't able to really do much to Izuku. Well, sure, it may have pushed him back a bit, but that was pretty much it, unfortunately. Deku would actually end up being the ultimate champion of the sports festival, winning in literally all 3 rounds. Well, all 3 parts of the festival, like the obstacle course, the cavalry battle, and the tournament aspect of the, well, sports festival. Izuku winning all of those would be like, how should I say it? He'll be scouted by many heroes. But which hero does he go with? First, we would actually need to figure out Deku's name and Deku's hero name in this what if, though. What Deku ends up naming himself when it comes on to Midnight coming into the classroom and just asking about their names, basically trying to get everybody to find a name for themselves. Deku actually goes with a very interesting name here. He goes with like the Ravenous hero. Actually no, scratch that. You guys come up with a name in the comments. As for ships, I've seen you guys constantly asking about this, and you know what I'll do? Man! I still don't know a ship, to be honest. Like, I'm not too fond of a female Tokoyami. But at the same time, I kinda am. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. You guys choose in the comments between these characters. I'm a female Tokoyami, Toga, and shoot. I actually have nobody else. Alright, Himiko Toga, female Tokoyami, and whatever any other character you think of. Let me know in the comments below which one you're going with. The one with the most likes wins. That's how I'm gonna do it. You guys comment below what ship, who should Izuku be shipped with in this what if, and we will actually go by the likes. Whoever has the most likes for the ship, guess what? That's going to be Izuku's ship in this what if. But going further on, we're going to have to say that when it comes on to just how Izuku fights, oh yeah, also when it comes on to like the names as well, whoever has the most likes for Izuku's hero name, that will end up being Deku's hero name in this what if. So what happens later on is obviously the fight against Sane, but we will also need to figure out which hero Izuku would intern with. I'm going to say that Izuku actually interns with a very interesting hero, to be honest. I'm going to say that he ends up training under, I have no idea. So you know what we're going to do? He ends up interning underneath this new interesting hero. This hero just popped out of nowhere and just started causing a storm. This guy kind of even looks like Izuku. This guy has horns like Izuku. He has like about 4 eyes, but how should I say it? When it comes on to those 4 eyes, they aren't necessarily arranged the same way as Izuku's own. Not necessarily the same way as Trigon's own. His 4 eyes are just there, like, scratch that, he does not have 4 eyes. He just has 2 yellow eyes. That's the thing about it. And when it comes onto his hair, and pretty plain, honestly, he just has horns and a darker skin tone, but he also has white hair. So this hero has been causing a storm in Japan lately. This guy is like the second coming of All Might. That's what people are saying now. And this guy is basically being called a demon by the villains because of just how strong he is. Some people are saying that he can probably even beat All Might with how strong he is. Some people are speculating. But what we're going to say is that Deku actually interns under this hero. This hero is interesting. Very, very interesting. And what ends up happening later though, when Izuku ends up interning under this hero just gives us some very weird vibes to Izuku. This guy, it just seems to be the pinnacle of negative energy. It's like when Izuku actually interns under him, he doesn't understand why he seems so negative, why his aura is just so negative for some reason. But Izuku decides to shrug it off for right now. Although when it comes on to just how powerful this guy is, that's the main reason Izuku ended up interning under him. Sure, he's not necessarily in the top 10 heroes. Well, not yet, that is, because he's just a recent player. He just joined like a couple months ago. So it's kind of hard for Izuku to tell what his rankings are. Although, from the looks of it, he's been rising in the ranks quite fast. Not necessarily top 10 yet, but he has been making a storm in Japan. I don't know why I keep on saying storm. Last but not least, what I'm going to say is that Deku would actually still end up in Hosu. Deku actually meets up in Hosu with Ida and Todoroki. Deku would actually meet them while they are trying to fight Stain. He saw the whole mess happening and is actually absorbing this negative energy and then just releasing it back out at the Nomus, trying to take them out as fast as possible. When he ends up finding Ida and Todoroki, they are on the ground about to be killed by Stain. He's about to do something. He's about to release a blast at Stain. He's about to use his telekinesis. He's about to use anything against Stain in order to stop him from actually killing both Ida and Todoroki. But what ends up happening is the strange character I mentioned before, he actually pops up and grabs Stain by the face. And what is revealed? He actually changes his form, and what Izuku sees shakes him to his core. Trigon, his father. Trigon, his father, is here in the flesh. Wow. That's right. Trigon is in this realm now. What happened in the last plate was that although Deku was able to learn a lot from his sister, nothing would prepare him for this encounter with their father. Well, at least sort of their father. You see, what ends up happening here is that Trigon was actually able to pass on some of his essence into Earth's realm. He's not necessarily at full strength because, well, simply put, no one would be able to handle no one would be able to handle Trigon at full power, not in this universe at the very least. So what's happening here is that I'm going to actually be weakening Trigon, and by explaining that this is only like a portion of his power, not that the heroes could actually match up against Trigon at full power, because obviously they can't. They're just too weak for that. But obviously though, when it came on to Stain, Trigon actually was the one to take down Stain. Not only that, but he was the one to also reveal himself. This was not an accident either. At first he was in like this sort of hero form, and then afterwards what ended up happening was pretty interesting, in where he reveals himself to Deku, explaining that he is his father, and not in no sort of Star Wars way with Darth Vader either. He doesn't cut off Deku's arm, but he does ask Deku to join him in his efforts in trying to take over this realm, trying to take over Earth essentially. But Deku would actually deny this. He wouldn't want to follow in his father's footsteps. Sure, he may look like him, but that doesn't mean that he has to be like him. He doesn't need to follow in his footsteps. He wants to be a hero. He does not have to turn to a life of villainy. He doesn't have to become like this sort of conqueror. There's a better word for it. He doesn't have to be like this sort of dictator. He doesn't have to be like this sort of crusader or anything along those lines. He can be what he wants to be, and he wants to be a hero, so he's going against his father's words. Obviously, Trigon is upset and is thinking about actually killing Deku. But he realizes that no, he can't necessarily kill Deku because he is one of his two transports. Like, he needs the both of them in order to actually make it all the way to, simply put, to actually bring the rest of his essence into this realm, to bring it into Earth. Without them, he basically has basically no gateway to Earth for right now. And so that's why he doesn't just end up killing Deku right away. And Deku still has a use to Trigon right now, so that's the main reason. On top of that, there's also the reason of the fact that he's just kind of weaker right now. Sure, he may be able to defeat Deku in battle, but he is not where he wants to be strength-wise, power-wise, all of that, especially with how Deku has this unique ability in where he can absorb negative energy from others. And that's the main reason that he doesn't want to just kill off Deku. He wants to take up that power. That power is very interesting, because he was literally made up out of all of the negative emotions. Obviously, he's just like the walking fountain, and if he were to try and actually fight Deku might actually have a small chance of defeating Trigon using that ability to absorb the negative energy from Trigon. So Trigon decides to not push his chances, and he just leaves. But he does actually end up meeting up with a League of Villains. He actually takes over one of the Nomu, I'm going to say the flying Nomu, and actually makes it back to Shigaraki and explains that, hey, if you help me out, I will help you out. I'll basically like supercharge your Nomu. I'll basically make your Nomu incredibly strong, as you can see with this one. Shigaraki actually looks back to the flying Nomu and sees that it's beginning to mutate, with all of this negative energy being poured into the Nomu. It's mutating him, or well, it at this point. what ends up happening is that this Nomu ends up growing much larger. Its muscles start to become bigger as well. On top of that, like, its skin even changes into like a red and black, with red being the primary color and the black just being cracks along the skin. Basically, it looks incredibly demonic. But that's not the big deal here. What's the big deal is the fact that Shigaraki is just looking at this Nomu, and this Nomu is semi-sentient now. Like, this thing is starting to speak in words now. This actually blows Shigaraki's mind. It even blows Kurogiri's mind as well. And they're watching this display and they're all impressed, thinking that, hey, whatever this guy did, that's impressive. This is something that we may want to actually discuss with Sensei, all for one, about. This guy might actually be worth keeping around. But for right now, let's just talk to him. So they do end up bringing Trigon over to the League of Villains hideout. Although, like, they want to have Stain join, they realize that this guy could be an even better asset, an even bigger asset to the League of Villains. What ends up happening for Deku's side of the story, he would end up telling Raven about what happened and saying that Trigon is in Japan now, or at least like a portion of him. He seemed weaker, but at the same time still very strong, enough for the heroes to be worried. And so obviously Raven is alarmed, but she decides, you know what, Deku, we're gonna fix this. So for right now, they end up telling the heroes about this. They end up telling All Might first off, because like, he's one of the heroes that they can trust the most. Like, for reasons being, well, they know he has a secret of his own. And it was originally just a scar, but also one for all. Raven basically has Raven. She is just able to read emotions. She can tell a person is hiding something. She actually interrogates All Might and even uses one of her magical spells in order to make All Might tell the truth about his quirk and where he got the injury from. Next thing you know, All Might blabbers everything out. Obviously, they use this against him, and they're like, hey, alright, you got your secret, we won't spill your secret, but since we know that you have such a weird quirk, we know that you can probably believe almost anything at this point. So basically, we have a demon father. Our father is a very interesting character in where they're basically like this demon lord, basically Satan, for crying out loud. And basically, this guy has been conquering dimensions and basically turning them to shreds at the same time. Basically rotting all of these dimensions. Earth is just one of these dimensions. This Earth is just one of the many dimensions that Trigon has brought to ruin over the many millennia that he's been alive for. And so, we're going to need your help. We are going to need you to actually get an army of heroes, because you by yourself are no match for Trigon. All Might wouldn't believe this at first, but then he realizes, okay, this actually might make sense, considering the fact that Deku is just a whole beast on himself. He's seen what Deku can do. This kid, at first he was wondering if he had any relation to All For One, but no. It's actually much worse than that. It's actually way worse, and it's the same for Raven as well. Like, sure, they can be like the best of assets, but at the same time, they also run the risk of this red guy out there who can actually level cities like as easy as clipping your nails or something. It's like if you breathe, for crying out loud. If he breathes, like, the world is done for. If he's at full power. Thankfully, he's not at full power here. He's like, his full power isn't here. Like, it's a very minuscule amount compared to the amount that he would usually have. So that's like a plus for them. But still, they have to actually fight Trigon. And Trigon is building an army of his own with the League of Villains. And speaking of the League of Villains, let's get back to them. For the next couple of months, what ends up happening is that the League of Villains, they just go into hiding, and they're just building up their resources. Like, sure, the final exams happen. Deku is actually easily able to take down All Might, just like in many of my what ifs, honestly. Basically what happens is that Deku is just able to one-punch All Might. He doesn't feel like having to really waste time fighting this time around. He needs to get back to training. He needs to get back to work immediately. He knows the consequences. He knows that they are in a dire situation, and they are basically building up these armies now. They're basically getting the heroes ready. They're basically readying up the students as well if they need to go into combat as well. And so even when it comes on to like the mountain training, like, things are not going to be as light as it used to be. It's going to be much more serious. This is going to be full-on military training sort of stuff. And even from day one, like you think they were going to be on a bus this time around? No, they actually had to walk all the way to the mountain area. Yeah, that's right, they had to walk. And as you know, it's a very long walk there. Like, it took them several hours just to reach up to the mountain. So you actually think that they would probably make it in just a good couple of hours? No, it probably took them the whole day. And then they were expected to also train on an empty stomach. They're basically going through the worst of the worst right now. They're making sure that these kids are going to be ready for what's next to come. They are not about to lose this fight. They are going to win. They are going to make sure that Trigon is put down. They're going to make sure that All For One is put down too. What they don't know is when it comes on to All For One and Trigon, they've actually collaborated. Trigon was actually able to heal All For One and even improve him to where he's even stronger than he was before. Stronger than in his prime. That's right. All For One is stronger than in his prime, and he was already able to be going toe to toe with All Might when he couldn't see, when he couldn't hear, like when half of his senses they were just null. And he was incredibly weakened. So just imagine how an All For One on his prime is. Now double that. Actually quadruple that. That's basically what All For One is like right now. He's way stronger than he's ever been. And he's actually happy with the results. He's looking at his normal, and he's building armies of them right now. When it comes on to ships, when it comes on to like the people within the League of Villains as well, I would say that it's pretty much the same as in canon. The same amount of people joining the League of Villains. It's just that when it comes on to the League of Villains, that they would start making waves in the underground. Although, like, they try to keep it on the down low when it comes on to like the outside world, the rest of the world. Like, they don't know what's going on with the League of Villains. Like, they're very secretive, but at the same time, there's a bunch of rumors going around in the underground about what's happening with the League of Villains. This actually gets the attention of Chisaki, which is weird. Like, he's wondering, okay, what's happening here? He actually ends up going to find the League of Villains, and he actually ends up encountering twice. After encountering twice, he actually leads him back to the League of Villains base, and that's where he meets I was about to say Chisaki. That basically Chisaki ends up meeting Alpha One and Trigon alongside Shigaraki. Those are like the three main people that look after the League of Villains. They're the ones that basically call all those shots. Although Shigaraki is used more as like a figurehead. He's basically like the poster boy for the League of Villains. But in reality, like, he doesn't call all the shots. He's basically made to look like the leader. But in reality, it's Alpha One and Trigon who are the leaders here because of just their sheer strength and because of just their sheer strength and power. Sure, here I would say that Shigaraki has actually awakened the rest of the K manga readers know what I'm talking about, but it still wouldn't compare to when Alpha One and Trigon have in store. Alpha One looks at Chisaki and is like, "So you want us to join you?" Chisaki would nod and say, "Yeah, I mean, look, in my opinion, you guys are kind of trash. Like, you guys have all of these elements. You literally have all of these chess pieces with you, and what are you using with them? Like, you're not really doing much of anything with them. So let me, a master chess player, use them to my advantage. Let me use your chess pieces. Let me take these chess pieces because these chess pieces are extremely valuable. I could make very good use of them if you just let me." That's something that I have to admit you guys have. You guys know how to get some very good resources. Alpha One would just laugh and tell Chisaki to come here. And Chisaki would walk nervously up to Alpha One, and Alpha One would simply grab Chisaki's face, steal his quake, and basically Chisaki goes brain dead. Yeah. Even if he didn't actually walk up to Alpha One, what would have ended up happening is that Kurogiri would actually however you pronounce his name. I hate pronouncing his name for some reason. Anyways, what ends up happening is, even if he didn't go up to Alpha One, what would have ended up happening is that a portal would open up beneath Overhaul's feet, and just transport him right next to Alpha One, where he can just steal his quirk just like that. No matter what, it was a lose situation from the get-go for Chisaki. Alpha One had already heard about Chisaki's quirk and wanted it from the very start. He actually ends up giving it to Tomura Shigaraki instead, though, because he is kind of already very strong. He doesn't really need this power anymore. He doesn't really want it. He wants it, but he realizes that a younger body could make good use of it as well. Besides, he's already much more powerful than he's ever been. The main reason he'd ever want to have Overhaul was to basically, simply put, fix himself. But that is no longer necessary with Trigon having fixed him up. To be even better than in his prime. When what's her name? When Toga saw this, she was actually a bit intimidated. She's actually much more intimidated by these guys than ever, because of just how powerful they are. Like, sure, like you can see what Deku does, but at the same time, these guys will just casually level cities, countries, probably. That's how powerful they are. Honestly, she is really considering, kind of just like reconsidering her decision of joining the league. Like, they're just very very wicked. It's not like how it was in canon, where at least there seemed to be like some sort of love between each other, like some sort of likability. And right now, it's actually extremely cold, and she doesn't like it at all. She just wanted to see some blood. And she would actually end up trying to encounter some of the heroes trying to find a scapegoat. Trying to say, oh, the heroes captured me or something. Basically trying to find her way out of the League of Villains, but she wasn't really able to find much of anything. What ends up happening, though, is Deku actually does encounter her while training, though. While training, just to be able to defeat his father. What ends up happening is that she would watch him train one night, and Deku would actually sense her. He would actually find her and actually capture her before she can even attempt to escape. And what ends up happening is that he would bring her to the principal's office. He would bring her back to UA, where the teachers would actually force her to snitch, essentially. Basically force her to give up information about the League of Villains. She would tell them just enough to where it wouldn't be that they would be able to necessarily catch the League of Villains, but at the same time, it was enough to give them a head start. It was enough to basically help them. So of course, Toga ends up being somebody that is working for the other side now. She's basically been captured by the enemy in All For One's eyes, and he doesn't find any use for her anymore. Like, she was meant to be a spy. She failed in her mission. Now he has to kill her. And so that's basically what's going to be happening. Look, Toga is scared. She is scared beyond all. But she's just extremely scared. She's like just 17. She doesn't want to die or anything. Like she remembers that she even has All For One linking to her brain, using like some sort of telepathy quirk, saying, "Hey, you ratted. I know that you probably ratted or something. So guess what? I'm going to have to kill you. I'm sorry, but that's just how we roll. I don't really care about your life. I really just wanted to use you as a pawn, and you failed in your mission as a spy. So that's just how the game rolls." All For One just sees everything as some sort of cruel game, and she doesn't like that. Toga doesn't like that. She actually ends up spilling more information to the heroes, and she would actually be released into the halls, although she would have to be wearing like these like quake bracelets or something, quake racing bracelets, these sort of handcuffs around her arms at all times, because of like her sadistic tendencies, basically, and the fact that she is a villain as well. She, or at least like she was a villain, but now she's been captured by the heroes. They still want to keep her alive. They don't want to kill her. That's not what heroes do. But at the same time, like they're trying to actually protect her here, knowing that All For One is on the lookout for her. They're basically going to try and kill her. So they're not about to have that. Even when it comes down to All Might, he is around to 24/7. Although she does end up meeting with Deku sometimes. And what ends up happening is that these two actually start talking some more. Over time, they actually start to build a bond. Deku actually likes Toga. Like, what's interesting here is that Deku finds Toga to be kind of interesting, and he would actually start to grow a very, very close bond with her until Deku actually wants to protect her himself. He is now basically the one to be guarding Toga 24/7, which All Might now doesn't have to be doing. when it comes on to Raven now, and she sees this and it's like, my little brother is growing up so fast. It brings a tear to my eye. That's basically what is going through her mind at the time. But at the same time, she's also basically studying up on her magic. She's basically going through these meditation techniques. She's going through everything in order to make sure that Trigon doesn't actually have like the heads up against him. She's making sure that he doesn't have. She's making sure that Trigon does not have any sort of counter to them. She's making sure that she has every counter in the book against Trigon's abilities. Everything that Trigon can do, she's basically making sure that she's basically preparing herself for any and all possibilities. She's even making sure that Deku does the same as well. She's teaching Deku about like this negative energy, exactly what he can do, especially with how his powers can mutate with enough absorption of negative energy, considering what happened back at the USJ. At the very end, they even bring in Fumakage. Oh, and in this version, Fumakage is a girl. Tokiyami is a girl in this version. And the way their quirk works, since I don't want them to have like the same bird head, is that they can just they can use Dark Shadow still, but whenever they do use Dark Shadow, that's when the face actually starts to morph into a bird's face, into like a crow or a raven's face. That's basically how it works. Don't at me, don't question me, just cause I don't want them to have that bird face all the time. Having it on regular Tokiyami is cool, but female Tokiyami, not so much. And if you guys can't already tell, I'm basically going to use all three of the girls. Momo, female Tokiyami, and Toga in this what if, since you guys were saying, oh, Momo is overrated. I mean, not overrated, but overused. Well, congratulations, you're gonna get all three. That's right, Deku's getting his own harem. What's next? I have nothing else to really say besides Deku is getting ready, and Deku is getting ready for this war. He's getting ready for he's getting ready for war. He's getting ready for something that should never have ever happened. He regrets what he's done in the past, knowing that this is basically all his fault, because he didn't know how to control using his negative energy, using this negative energy absorption ability of his. He was absorbing too much negative energy back at the USJ, and look what it's caused him. Congratulations, Deku. All of this is your fault. That's basically what is going through Deku's mind half of the time. When he's fretting, he's basically wondering how is he going to basically fight against All For One and Trigon. Like, Trigon is what he's really worried about, especially with all that the man can do and all that he doesn't know that he can do. Like, he only knows like a couple of things that Trigon can do, but there's just so much more to it. That's when Deku is terrified about. He doesn't know exactly what his father can do, so he's basically been losing sleep. He's been unconsciously absorbing some more negative energy, and Raven actually calls him out on this sometimes, saying that, hey, you are absorbing too much negative energy. At the very end, what ends up happening though is that Momo actually helps Deku try and meditate. They basically try and make some weapons, getting ready for this war. So they're basically having their own war arc. Everything that happens I'm going to say what happens is that when it comes on to the provisional exam, that goes pretty similar to in canon, except, well, obviously Deku is much more of a worry here. He's scared about his father, although like but even when it comes on to how things go for the provisional license exam, it's very, very easy for Deku. He's basically able to blow through the competition. But what's very scary here is what happens next. Like when it comes on to like just fighting gang orc and all of that, basically helping the civilians. Yeah, he had no problem with that. Although these civilians, these people that were basically helping, and sort of, I guess, like they were, I don't know how to really describe it. Basically, they still took down points for Deku being a warrior where he wasn't really showing like a smile and all of that. But Deku still made it out. He still got his license. I would say that even Bakugo and Todoroki got their licenses here as well. Like, they're not even tripping over that right now. What they are worried about is what happens next. Remember, when it comes on to the overhaul, like, no, that doesn't happen here. What happens is that since Alpha One basically killed Chisaki, he basically took over the Yakuza. That's right. So his army has grown exponentially. Even when it came onto the Liberation Army, he knew about them, and he basically shut down their whole operation as well. He is basically taking over his empire. Like, he's been taking quakes and everything. He's basically been building up this empire of his, while Trigon is just lounging around watching the world burn. And he's like, yes. That's basically all I got for right now. KingTitanX is going to continue this because I want to finish this right now. What happens next is pretty interesting. What happens is that because of the fact that there's no Chisaki arc, no overhaul arc, what is replaced is the Alpha One arc. Basically, Alpha One would end up capturing. Alpha One would basically do this. Alpha One would basically end up capturing Toga and Momo. No, not Momo. No, what ends up happening is that Alpha One will actually capture Toga and try to kill her. But the heroes actually prevent that. They're actually able to prevent that from happening. What ends up happening instead is that although Alpha One is able to capture her for a little bit, the heroes were able to actually intervene and actually bring her back. Tokoyami was actually one of the people to help here, one of the trainees. Basically, what ends up happening is that she would use Dark Shadow in order to stop Alpha One from getting too far away with Toga, and she actually drags Toga back to their premises. Unfortunately, Alpha One captures her instead. Alpha One captures Tokoyami. But what Alpha One doesn't know is that Momo actually used a tracking device. Momo put a tracking device on Tokoyami. Everything is just going according to plan. Technically speaking, like, they wanted Alpha One to actually grab onto at least one of the students and basically bring them back to his base, where they will be able to track down that student using Momo's tracking device. Afterwards, what happens is that Alpha One would try and take Tokoyami's quake, but Tokoyami is actually able to rip out the restraints and actually start dodging Alpha One's hands. Like, yeet. Like, she has been training a lot more intensely here than male Tokoyami can, and she's actually even been able to control Dark Shadow in the darkness even better than even better than Canon Tokuyami. It's to the point where, like, even though she ends up getting engulfed in Dark Shadow at one point, it's to the point where it doesn't even matter at this point because she's still able to control. She's still able to control them to an extent. They're basically working hand in hand. They're basically trying to fight off All For One and Trigon and Shigaraki and Twice and Magni. Basically, the whole League of Villains army basically includes like the core League of Villain members. Then you have the Yakuza, although they aren't there willingly, and then you have the whole Liberation Army. Although All For One took Reed Destro's quirk and actually gave it to Shigaraki, who could make very good use of that. With all these abilities in hand, she's still in a run for her money. But it doesn't take too long for the heroes to actually gather up their resources. Like, they've been prepping for a long while now. It's just that they needed a location, so they immediately start heading out. It's like Deku is literally riding on Ryukyu, and they actually end up flying over to. Actually, several heroes are flying on Ryukyu. Heroes who can fly, they're flying. Those who can't fly, they don't want to waste any time by having to worry about them not catching up. They actually have these heroes. Fly on Ryukyu and any other heroes that can fly and able to grow big. All of those sort of heroes, they basically are holding the ones that cannot do those sort of things so that they can cover more distance at a faster rate. What happens is that they are very strategical with this, but things just don't go according to plan. Although they're able to find the location, they weren't expecting so many Nomu and Liberation Army members. They weren't expecting just that insane amount of people. So it's basically Armageddon right now. Like, basically, you can look at what's happening now in the manga, for crying out loud. Like, so many deaths are happening. Deku is basically absorbing this negative energy because he knows that that's the only way that he can even pose a match against his father. And Raven is watching Deku absorb this negative energy and is kind of worried for Deku. She's worried for her brother because of the fact that he might lose his sanity here. What happens is that next thing you know, Raven actually jumps into some of Deku's fights and starts using her magical spells against these villains. She's basically able to push them back, basically able to wipe their memories, basically turn them into idiots, for crying out loud. Like, give them the mind of children. She's doing all of that right now. She's going in boss mode. When it comes down to Momo, she's also flying alongside Deku. They're making a pretty good team. She's making cannons, she's making all sorts of weapons right now. And she's basically eating like these sort of protein pills, like these sort of she's drinking these protein shakes, basically building up on her calories at the same time. And she's exhausted. She's exhausted, but she has basically been like the weaponsmith for like the heroes throughout this whole entire war arc that is happening right now. All For One is fighting against All Might. All Might is actually enhanced thanks to the efforts of Raven and Deku here. They were actually able to heal All Might's injury, and Cyborg also helped here when it came on to healing the injury as well, thanks to his advanced knowledge on technology. And he even enhances All Might to much higher physical capabilities than he ever had in his prime, because they had a feeling that Trigon would probably do something for Mr. All For One, Mr. Shigaraki, the guy that originally had the name Shigaraki. If you guys didn't know that, I'm sorry, that's a bit of a spoiler. Yeah. But All For One and All Might are duking it out. All For One is like, you can't defeat me. But what ends up happening is that he is in for the shock of his life because of the fact that All Might is actually holding his own against All For One. All For One was expecting that All Might wouldn't be able to hold a candle to him at this point, but it turns out that no. Thanks to all of these enhancements, like sure, it may have shortened All Might's life, but yeah. It may have shortened All Might's life, but at the same time, it made him exponentially stronger. It was worth it. It was worth the cost. Like, he was going to be the symbol of peace until the very end. What happens is that All Might is able to just land punches and punches. He's basically able to barrage All For One with punches, kicks, basically fighting tooth and nail against All For One. When it comes down to Deku versus his father, that's where things get interesting, and where Deku cannot necessarily fight his father like he wants to. He's absorbing this negative energy, but it's actually starting to overload him. And when it comes on to Raven, she's watching this go on. She is just worried for Deku. Even Momo is worried for Deku. Everyone is worried for Deku because they knew what happened last time. And Deku is actually growing much larger too. Even Trigon acknowledges this. He's like, hey, I see puberty is starting to reach you now. I see that you're starting to go through puberty. I respect that, son. Congratulations, you're becoming a man. And starts to punch and sucker punches Deku. I respect that. Like, you are trash. Not Sakura trash, but you are trash compared to me. Still. But what happens is that although Deku is still not strong enough to fight against his father by himself, it's a different story when Raven comes into battle, because Raven has experienced a lot with her father. She has had to face the worst when it came on to Trigon, and they actually end up going into like the white point, basically when their emotions are all in tandem, they're all in the right spectrum. And she releases everything on her father. She cannot necessarily defeat her father, but she can seal him back into his realm. She can actually push him back to his realm, and back to like that demon realm of his. That's basically what their goal is right now. If they are able to do that, then they will be able to basically reset everything. What happens is that Deku is absorbing the negative energy. He's getting stronger and stronger throughout this fight. I was about to say All For One. Trigon acknowledges this. He's impressed, but he still thinks that he has a chance against Deku. He doesn't believe that Deku can defeat him. When it comes on to like some of the heroes as well, like they're also trying to fight Trigon, but they're mere ants to Trigon. Trigon is getting larger as well with all of this negative energy throughout this fight. Everything that's happening, things are just going up for Trigon, and at least in his viewpoint, because like the sky is starting to fall, the sky is starting to break. Like, you can literally see the sky starting to crack. These red cracks are starting to appear on the sky, and he can literally see fingers he can start seeing these nails start to claw through. And Raven is like, oh snap, oh no, oh no, oh why. So she's putting even more effort into trying to put their father back into that realm, back into his respective realm. And Deku is starting to lose his sanity here. And Deku is starting to go berserker. He's starting to go berserk on All For One. He's starting He's trying to go berserk on Ulfwood. He's trying to go berserk on Shigaraki. He's going berserk on everybody. He's absorbing all this negative energy. Like, Shigaraki is trying his best against Deku. He can't do anything against Deku, unfortunately, because every attack that he throws, Deku just absorbs that and gives it back to him 10 times. 10 times the power. The only reason why Shigaraki was even able to, well, simply put, was even able to hold a candle against Deku in this state is because of the overall quirk. Ulfwood, unfortunately, he had no such quirk, and it is actually killed by Deku here. Although All Might was able to put a good amount of damage on. Although All Might was able to put a very substantial amount of damage towards Ulfwood, so it was basically that Deku just sealed Ulfwood's fate. He basically was a cherry on top for Ulfwood. In terms of his father, though, that was a different story because of just how powerful their father was. Like, their father was commanding a whole bunch of Nomu. This man was willing to fight against them using all these Nomu. He had an army of Nomu. He had an army of liberation people. He had such a huge army that it was just ridiculous. But Deku was actually building up a very large body count. At the very end, simply put, Deku was actually able to decimate the whole field. He was using like these AoE attacks. Same for Todoroki and Bakugo. Like, they were going hardball on here. Everybody was going their hardest. Momo was kind of out of it though, unfortunately, because she was using too much of her fat cells, and using too much of your fat cells wasn't very good for her. Like, she was exhausted. She had to end up staying by one of her weapons. Then Cyborg actually took over like one of these weapons. Actually enhanced these weapons. He actually took over one of these weapons and actually looked at how they were created and even added them to his arsenal for the moment, making sure that, well, he basically made it so that when it came onto these weapons, it was incredibly strong. He was incredibly strong with these weapons. Like, he was basically just giving himself a boost, a buff throughout this whole war. Same for when it came on to Starfire. She was basically using these weapons to give herself a buff. Although not in the same way as Cyborg. She was using them in the traditional way. And she was basically using her energy manipulation. She was shooting beams of energy at these guys as well. So she had long range abilities. She was shooting eye rays, laser beams, all of that. Deku was literally shooting mouth cannons at this point. He was a hulking giant. He was a behemoth. He was looking more and more like his father. Momo would try and speak some reasoning into Deku, but she is barely able to get anything out. It's the same thing for Tokuyami as well. Female Tokuyami, I should say. Tokuyami actually manages to try and get to Deku at the very end. She knows how it is when it comes on to handling the negative energy. Like, she's one of the best when it comes on to handling negative energy because of her quirk, which basically can feed on negative energy, and if she lets it loose too much, very bad things will happen. What happens is that Deku actually does start to calm down, and is actually able to start focusing more clearly on his father. Raven and Deku, they actually go ahead and fight off their father. They're using combination attacks. They're using everything in the book. They're using everything in their arsenal in order to defeat Trigon, but it's almost not enough. And that's what they can't understand. They have to bring in so many more heroes in order to make sure that they put Trigon down for good. And it took the combined forces of Raven, Deku, Cyborg, Starfire, All Might. All Might actually died in this fight, for crying out loud. By the end of this fight, they were actually able to take down their father, Trigon. They were actually able to throw him back into his dimension and basically seal him back in his realm for now. Unfortunately, many lives were lost here, with one of the most significant ones being All Might. All Might is dead here. And same for many other people. Like, it's basically, I've said it before, it was Armageddon here. Like, so many lives were lost, but Deku doesn't know how to cope. He feels that everything is all his fault. Momo and Tokuyami would speak sense into Deku, and throughout the next couple of months, all of them would get rather close. Although Toga was probably the closest to him, Toga would know how it is, being different from others because of like just your heritage, like just your DNA, all of that. Like, she would know how it is, and she would also speak some reasoning into Deku, saying that it's not his fault. He just didn't know how to control his powers at that point. Like, none of this was really his fault. If anything, like, it's nobody's fault at the end of the day. Like it's not his fault that the society has a lot of negative energy. It's not his fault that he was unconsciously absorbing that negative energy. And Raven even steps in saying that, hey, our father has actually used me as a sort of scapegoat in the past to make it into this realm, although not to full power. Never has he ever been at full power. He's always tried to get full power, but never managed to get all the way. So I think like this is probably like the best we've had for a while when it came on to fighting our dad. But I'm glad to have you in my life, Izuku. Like, if it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't. If it weren't for you and my friends right here, I probably wouldn't know how to cope myself. I would probably end up in a very, very dark place. I don't want to ever go through that. You shouldn't ever have to go through that either, Izuku, so don't seal yourself up there. So don't seal yourself, don't seal your emotions. And that's one of the worst routes to go. Because don't try and distance yourself from others. Embrace the love, Izuku. Izuku would embrace the love a bit too much. He would actually go a bit excessive. Not too excessive, basically kissing at this point. Momo, Tokuyami, and Toga. And over the years they would build an even closer bond until by the end Deku actually proposed to all three of them. I don't know how to say it, but basically over the years, what ends up happening at the very end of these years, Deku actually made it to become the #1 hero. Raven became like one of the top heroes in America. Deku proposed to those three because they were incredibly close. They became incredibly close over the years. They helped him to get through some very, very dark times alongside his sister, but he can't propose to his sister. That's weird. We don't do incest here. We don't promote incest, okay? What happens is after everything, when Deku proposes to them, they get married. Everything goes off without a hitch. Well, Toga still has to do some time. She basically has to go through some like remedial stuff. She basically has to go through some stuff in order to have it be that I don't know how to say it. Basically, she has to do community service. She has to serve some time, but if they're able to make it work, and she actually got a reduced time for helping the heroes throughout this time as well. By the end, they actually have some kids, and they're all 1/4 demon. So yeah, that's interesting. When it came on to Deku's kid with Momo, they have Momo's creation abilities, although it's way more enhanced. They're basically able to use that negative energy in the realm. They're basically able to use all forms of energy, really, and be able to create weapons out of it. They're actually able to form weapons out of that. When it comes on to Deku's kid with Tokuyami, their kid has like dark manipulation. Like their kid has the full-on darkness manipulation, child manipulation, all of that. Like when it comes to Toga now, they basically have blood manipulation. Not the strongest, like basically they're able to control people with their mind using blood. They're basically also able to transform into anybody they really want and use their abilities as well, although not to the same degree as the original person, maybe actually even better sometimes, depending on like how weak or strong the original user was. But whenever they can get like a blood sample, like it can last for a very long while, unlike with Toga, where like a small sample it wouldn't last long. A small sample for them, it would last very long. It would last very long for them, and overall that's how it goes. Things are happy for them. Deku is happy and everybody is happy. Although there's still this ominous figure in the background. They know that if Trigon ever comes back, things are going to be different. Deku is ready. He is much more prepared. He's far stronger than he's ever been. They're going to be ready for a situation of Trigon ever appearing again. They will be ready. You'll be ready for whenever Trigon appears again, because Raven actually informed Deku that, hey, you won't ever be able to truly get rid of our father, but all we have to do is to just become stronger, so that we will be able to defeat our father. We will be able to defeat him and send him back to the realm, send him back to the demon realm easier than last time. And hopefully with much less casualties than the last time. That's what they're hoping for. That's how everything will go for. That's how everything will go over the next couple of years. That's how everything goes from now on. And yeah, that's basically all I got for right now. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. KingTitanX out.